There is not an established business out there, regardless of what's happening in the wider political and economic climate, that between now and the end of next summer could not generate an extra £15,000 of net profit. Welcome to Business Growth Central with the Botterills,
the father and son's team who built dozens of seven-figure businesses and generated over £100 million in sales.
And since 2010, we've run Entrepreneur Circle, the UK's largest organisation helping businesses to grow.
Every week, we're sharing practical tactics, swipeable strategies,
and powerful nuggets to help you to grow your business. This is Business Growth Central
with the Botterills.
Hey, welcome back to Business Growth Central. I'm Nigel Botterill. I'm the founder of Entrepreneur Circle.
I'm Cameron Botterill, the managing director here at Entrepreneur Circle.
And I'm Elliot Botterill, the chief marketing officer here at Entrepreneur Circle.
And if you've got a question, if you're a business owner out there and want our help, our advice, then please email in podcast@entrepreneurcircle.org and maybe we'll answer your question on a future episode.
But before then, let's get stuck in.
Let's do it.
To this episode. And we are at that time of year when our minds certainly are turning towards next year.
Can you believe it?
Planning, the P word.
It's not even December yet. God, ahead of the game.
Well, it's quite important to be ahead of the game. We had a very constructive day yesterday, didn't we? We took the entire day with our entire leadership team. We were locked in our big boardroom upstairs. They did send food and sustenance. But we did have a very, very productive day planning in quite a lot of detail what our business is going to do next year. And I thought it would be a good topic for us to talk about, because what we know, having worked with, many, many thousands of businesses over the last 15 years, is that actually planning is one of those things that most businesses don't do very well. And you think you know why that is, don't you?
I think it's actually a very tough thing that sounds so simple. You know, we all know fundamentally we should have a plan. But when you're in a business, it's actually, I think, way harder than that. And so back in the days when I used to run my own digital marketing agency, when I started my business, I think like a lot of people, my initial plan and goal was very simple. I was working in an advertising agency at the time on £24,000 per annum. And my goal for year one of my business was if I could make £24,001, then that is a humongous win.
Oh boy.
Because I've, escaped the rat race and bought my freedom, and wow, we'll be able to build it from there. And so luckily, I'm pleased to report we did surpass that goal.
24,002, wasn't it?
But then all of a sudden you have this business. And something that I struggled with, because I was, 24, 25 at the time, was, okay, I've got this business. It's now making some money. What is the long-term plan? Mm-hmm. Because especially having had relatively little experience in other businesses, I didn't know where to take it. And fundamentally, I had no idea really what I wanted. Or, I had lots of things that, oh, yes, bit more money, cool car, go get a nice flat in London, that'll all be nice. But fundamentally, I really lacked the clarity on what I wanted. And therefore, it was tough to build and plan a business.
And this is where the planning process starts. And ironically, the planning process, if you're going to do this properly and usefully, which is the really key thing, then actually the planning process starts outside of the business. The business does not feature in the beginning of a proper planning process. It starts with you as the business owner answering the questions that Elliot was metaphorically asking himself. He said, well, what do I actually want? Why am I doing this? What is it all about?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Is that a business owner has sent in a question? They need help.
Gosh, Cal, what is the question today? I hope it's to do with planning.
Oh, it's from Liam Fletcher. Guys, would you believe it? This is serendipitous. Liam Fletcher asks, guys, how do you plan for the year ahead? I don't want next year to be a repeat of this year. What should I be doing now?
Okay.
Wow. Well, Liam, what are the odds that this is the week you send in your question? Gosh,
Right. The podcast gods have looked kindly upon us.
thank goodness.
Liam, this is great, and the good news is we are going to tackle this properly for you. And the planning starts. It's interesting, Liam's comment there, isn't it? He doesn't want next year to be the same as this year. Yet, isn't that how it is for so many business owners? What they actually, so someone's been in business for 10 years. Actually, they haven't really been in business 10 years. They've been in business for 1 year and they've done it 10 times.
Yes.
Because the outcomes and the challenges and everything goes through a cycle. And it broadly, we're in this cycle of just repeating year on year. So, Liam, we're going to help lift you out of that by talking you through a proper planning process, which I think we can do.
Yeah, of course.
And as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted,
Liam.
the planning process starts, and this will be very, very important for Liam, given that he's in this loop.
Stuck.
He's on a treadmill, effectively.
A hamster wheel treadmill.
And I've got this picture of little Liam sort of beavering away. And Liam, forget the business for a moment. Look at your life. And that's like a really big thing. Oh, fuck. But we are, all of us, on this planet for a teeny tiny amount of time. It's something that, as you get older, I think you particularly appreciate. Maybe harder for you younger chaps, to fully grasp this yet. But as a business owner, we're in this most privileged position because there's no one telling us what to do. Mm-hmm. We genuinely do have control of our destiny. We get to decide where we end up. And all that is a product of where we manage to steer our business to. So the stakes in that regard couldn't be higher, could they?
It's the curse of the business owner. No one's telling you what to do. That's great. But it also means no one's telling you what to do. So it's all down to you to actually choose the direction that you want to head in.
So how should people then, Cam, because you've done a little bit of this, how do you work out what you want to do?
Well, I think it all starts with, actually, I would look at next year now, because it's never too early to start planning for next year, and I would actually start to map out what do you want your life to look like? Yeah. What do you want to be able to do? And that's much easier for people who perhaps do have a family. Yes. That's a great motivator. Maybe you do want to send the kids to private school. Maybe you do want to go to Disney World on holiday. Maybe there's a lot of stuff there. But not just materialistic things. Maybe you just want to have a sense of comfort and safety. Maybe you want a certain amount, saved up emergency funds. Maybe you want to retire your spouse so that your partner doesn't have to work.
Yep.
There's all sorts of some very noble, some very just fun things that you want to do in your life. And it's your life. So there's no right or wrong answer there. You can choose the life you want. Again, that's one of the perks of being a business owner. I'd map out that whole life and I'd spend the day. I'd actually spend the day, an evening. It's quite a fun activity. Let's price it up. Let's work out, actually, to live this life that I want to live, what is involved.
And if there is a significant other in your life...
Oh, get them involved.
Then it's actually really important, is this, to properly look at this and plan. And in many ways, where my business is at now, because our business is a pretty large business, we turn over a pretty sizable 8-figure sum. It's very profitable. But that has all come from kind of like 20 planning processes over the last 20 years, kind of like this. And we used to, I don't know whether you guys remember or relate, but we always used to go away in October half term on holiday. We would always go somewhere, usually overseas. And at some point in the October half term holiday, your mum and I would leave you kids, we'd just neglect you for an evening. And
sounds about right.
It's just for an evening. I think, as I remember, you did hammer the room service pretty hard one year. And we would go for a dinner, Sue and I, specifically to look at what next year was going to look like. And it depends where we were in that last 20-year journey. Sometimes it was about where we were going to travel to. Sometimes it was about what we need to do to the house.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, it was about how the hell do I put all these 4 kids through private school? Because that's going to cost 15 grand a year, times 4 is 60 grand a year. After tax, that's 120 grand I've got to earn. I've got my kids in school, but I've got nowhere to live and nothing to eat. Oh shit, I need to earn a lot of money. What needs to happen in the business to throw off the number that can allow us to do that?
That's the key, isn't it?
That is absolutely the key.
Mapping that out, mapping out what you want,
Yeah.
pricing it up, and then the key is translating that into then what does the business need to do in order to deliver that for me.
So before we get into the business bit, just one other thing here, because what we find now, because we do a lot of work with Entrepreneur Circle members, helping them with their planning, and what we discovered is it's actually really hard, as you were saying, it's really hard for business owners to think much beyond their existing life. That's the price you pay when you're on a treadmill. It's really difficult to think about, I could do these things that are very different to what I've done hitherto, in my life.
Yeah.
I know we talk a lot, really key ingredient, a couple of key ingredients in my life. I have a gardener that looks after my garden, and I have a housekeeper that looks after my house. And there's a cost to those two things. And they were, once upon a time, 20 years ago, they were in my plan for next year. Can I generate the £3,000 a month it will need to actually pay for a gardener and a housekeeper? What would the business have to do to chuck off £3,000 a month? And that was in the plan. And once we'd done it, it became part of the norm. And then, it can start quite small. I'm not suggesting it doesn't have to start there, although for some people, add to the list that you gave, Cameron, could be get a cleaner, because it's kind of nice when you don't have to go home and do chores.
And for some people, it might be easier to plan out the next few years. You don't have to achieve everything in the next 12 months. So you might, pace it out. You might say, okay, next year the plan is to, retire the spouse. The year after that means that we'll have enough to do these holidays. And then, hire a housekeeper. Oh my goodness, and spread it out a little bit.
I think the key thing is that you just have to really try and force yourself to go big with it. And what I found kind of useful before was almost doing two versions. One is my version that is just completely the sky's the limit, absolutely maxing out every possible remit of my life just to do that kind of thought exercise. And then one that I thought is actually kind of a bit more realistic for this year. Because what I have witnessed most business owners experience is that their innate kind of fear of failure, of setting these goals, if they don't actually believe they can achieve them, then they just won't set them. And you need to let the mind run free, because more often than not, all of our thinking is somewhat constrained. And I know we're pretty lucky having grown up in an entrepreneurial family and, ridden highs and lows, but also been exposed to this different way of thinking. And when I've worked in businesses with my other colleague before that come from non-entrepreneurial backgrounds, the way they think, I have observed it to be just so much more constrained. And it's trying to give yourself permission to just break free.
And it was the case for all of time, really, until 60 or 70 years ago. What you were born to in life was where you ended up. There was a very rigid class system, and it was very difficult to move between it. That has all disappeared now in this country. You look at the Sunday Times Rich List every year, and it is now full. When it started in the late 70s, it was full of inherited wealth. And now there's hardly any inherited wealth in that list, because all the self-made entrepreneurs have built really big empires. And that's an extreme level. But for all of us running businesses, we're in the most privileged position, and the opportunities we've got are just huge. One tool that we'll show is particularly helpful, I think, is holidays. And we love Disney, and travel was always a big thing for us. And if you're growing up in the UK and you've got children, then taking them to Disney in Florida, because it is way better than Paris.
Way better.
Going to Disney in Florida will be a thing on most people's bucket list, dream list thing to do. Now, to take a family of 4 to Disney in Florida for a fortnight, you're not going to get a lot of change from. You need at least 15, and it'd be much nicer if you got 20 grand, because Disney is the masters of money extraction.
Yes.
So pick your number. Depends where you're going to stay and stuff, but 15 or 20 grand. Now, for lots of people, that is a prohibitive sum. The notion, but I promise you, if you've got an established business, there is not an established business out there, regardless of what's happening in the wider political and economic climate, that between now and the end of next summer could not generate an extra £15,000 of net profit. And a really smart way, and we had a little club in Entrepreneur Circle a few years ago, and there was well over 100 members, people that committed, and it didn't have to be the Disney trip, or it could be whatever holiday, do what you want to do. But actually, the really powerful bit of this is you go online or you go to a travel agent and you book the holiday. All right, and you've got to pay a deposit now, which is a grand or something to book your spot. And you book the holiday for like 12 months ahead. And so you've got 10 months before the balance has to be paid. So now you've got 10 months to make sure you generate an extra 15 grand of revenue. And it forces you, and the thing to do is tell the kids they're going, tell all the relatives, tell all your friends you're going, because let's ramp up the stakes now, because it's a little lot like the private school thing.
And it comes back to that whole, you're the business owner, so there's no one telling you what to do. And so we need to almost hold ourselves accountable to these goals that we've got. And it's like, it's like you said about if your goal's too unrealistic and I'll give it a go, but then kind of just give up. But if you actually take the step, if you pay the deposit, if you book it in, now you force yourself to then do the work that needs to be done to deliver the result.
And if you raise the stakes by telling everybody and going public with this, I said public, doesn't need to be on news at 10, but tell the kids, tell the family that this is that we're going on this trip. And now it will force you to do the right things in your business to generate the surplus 15 grand. And the beautiful thing is once the holiday's paid, the money keeps on coming in the business. And now all of a sudden we've risen our net profitability, and we're now now we're doing it, now can do it again. And that's how you start to build a much bigger business that can fund a very different lifestyle to the one where lots of entrepreneurs currently feel trapped, because the majority of people in business are getting by or struggling. That's the truth of it. There's a relatively small little slice at the top. There's 15-20% of business owners who are living large and doing great. And the trick is, how do you move yourself up that pyramid into that top slice? And the planning process plays a really big part in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got clarity on why we want to do this. How do you guys approach planning practically?
Well, I think Entrepreneur Circle is obviously, because of the size of business we have multiple different divisions. So we almost plan about 8 or 9 times, because each division we look at on its own. So we have the revenue, we have the cost of sales, but it all starts with, okay, what do we want to achieve next year? What do we want to end up? What do we want each division to actually contribute to?
And this has been very different for us this year, because we... in 2025, we moved premises and we bought our own new building. We dropped 5 million quid this year on our building and then fitted it out properly, which was another big chunk of change. And so that's now brought a very different context to our planning process than has been the case previously. We took a fairly modest mortgage, but there's a mortgage on this new building, and I want to get it repaid.
It's like a really boring Disney holiday,
well,
isn't it?
but that's actually true. But that is actually true. So there's a big chunk of cash that I brought to the plan table this year and said, right, guys, we've got to obviously meet the payments on the mortgage, but actually I want to go further than that. I want to get this mortgage repaid in the next 4 or 5 years. To do that, I want us to generate this much extra cash on top of everything else we want to do to chunk off the mortgage. So we brought something to the table, which could be it's a really good analogy. It's the really dull kind of Disney trip. But we work out what it is that we want to do, and this is why starting your planning process, think outside the business, looking at what you want in your life, and putting some kind of cost onto that.
Yeah, and that's going to get you so much better results than what most people do. I mean, we can talk about how most people don't even plan at all and just roll into the next year and continue to just do day to day. They almost just live week by week. It's Monday, we're doing this, and don't even stop to plan. Even those who do plan will say, okay, last year we did 700 grand. This year, let's try and do 800. They just...
we'll grow by 10%.
They just nudge up by 10%. Oh, a bit ambitious. 20% growth this year. Let's do it. And they just nudge up what they're doing this year rather than working backwards, which I think is just a much more effective way of looking at it. Don't you think?
Yes. Can I tell you a story?
Please do.
So I had a guy in one of my mastermind groups, and this is 12 months ago. And he was he was at the helm of what's called, it was a lifestyle business, effectively. It was paying him 50 grand a year. It was a good business. He'd been going for, interestingly, about 10 or 11 years at this point, turning over £500,000 a year, 50% gross profit. So he's got 250 grand towards his overheads and his profit. His overheads were running about a couple of £100,000, so there's 50 grand left for him. So not a very exciting business that's kind of 10 years in. And he did take to heart this notion of actually, well, what do I actually want my life to look like? What could I actually do? And he came to the mastermind table around about this time last year and said, I've realised where I need to be. I said, it's fantastic. Where do you want to be? He said, I need £200,000 a year of net profit. If I can have £200,000 a year of net profit, he said, my life will be very, very different. And if you could help me to get to 200 grand of net profit, that would be fantastic. I said, great. Let's work it back up. I said, will your overheads have to go up? He said, well, I think they will. He said, I think we've got a bit of capacity in the business, but to do what I think we'll need to do, the overheads are likely to go up to £250,000 of overheads. So I've got £200,000 of net profit plus 250 grand of overheads means I need 450 grand of gross profit, because that's all gross profit is. It's your profit plus your overheads. So when you're working it upwards from the bottom. So 450 grand of gross profit at 50% margin means he needs £900,000 of turnover. So he's already doing £500,000. Now this is interesting for a lot of people, because a lot of people instinctively think, oh, if I'm doing 50 grand of net profit now, to get to 200 grand of net profit, I've got to grow my business fourfold. So from £500,000 of turnover, I've got to get to 2 million. Oh, there's no way I can do that. But that's not how business works. Business maths is very different to that, because as you grow the business, in most cases, your overheads don't scale up at the same rate. So you need less turnover. In his case, if he had £900,000 of turnover, that would give him, at 50% gross margin, 450 grand of gross profit. Take off his 250 grand of overheads, leaves him with his 200 grand of net profit. So he's only got to go from 500 grand where he is now to 900 grand to move his profit from 50 to 200. This is a really excellent way to start a planning process.
And to go from where he is now, getting by on his 50 grand, to living his ideal life.
Well, let me tell you how, because his business was a really interesting one, because his business provides services to other businesses. So his customers pay him on a monthly basis. So this is great news. Any business like that, they're the best ones to plan for. So, and again, in round numbers, he's currently, his customers, he had 50 customers paying him 10 grand a month. 10 grand a year, sorry. 50 customers, 10 grand a year, £500,000 of turnover. Okay, if we can keep the 10 grand a year for the customers, then to get £900,000, he just needs 90 customers. So he's got to go from 50 customers to 90 customers. So all of a sudden now, this is becoming, oh my goodness. So the difference between where you are now and where you want to be is 40 more customers. Now all of a sudden he's getting clarity that he's never had before, but he's gone through this planning process. Now 40 customers, roughly speaking, one a week. Take a few holidays, right off Christmas, 40 customers, one a week. I said, well, what would have to happen for you to get one new customer a week? He said, well, the customers don't sign up until they've had a meeting or a demo with him. I said, well, what's your conversion? He said, well, roughly 1 in 2. I said, so for you to get one customer a week, you'd need to do 2 demos. He said, yeah. I said, fantastic. Because now we're only 2 demos a week away from where you want to be. I said, what would have to happen for you to get 2 demos a week? So I'd need some inquiries. Well, how many inquiries would you need? He said, well, I'd probably need 5 or 6 inquiries. Okay, so to get 2 demos, we're going to get 5 or 6 inquiries a week. What would have to happen to get 5 or 6 inquiries a week? And now we've got real, because if we can generate 5 or 6 inquiries a week for 40 weeks, and you can convert them in the right order at those demo meetings, you're actually moving from 50 grand a year profit to 200 grand a year profit. And all of a sudden, this clarity, all this fog had lifted, all this grey yuckiness that's, I don't know what I want, I don't know where I'm at, how on earth do I get there? It just all lifted. And I know, I've simplified the numbers a little bit just to make it hopefully a little bit easier to understand. But fundamentally, that's what a planning process is all about, to break it down. And we did it yesterday, because Elliot heads up all our marketing, and you've got real clarity as to how many customers need to come in to our Genie AI CRM division, for instance. next year. And you know how many demos you need to book to make that customer number happen on a weekly basis. And the first thing he says, to do this, guys, I need to hire 2 more sales staff. That's okay, we can build that in the plan. We can start to work it through.
Yeah, it's such a powerful process. I think being able to translate, like to take you from where you are now to where you want to be next year, which should be like your ideal life, and to be able to translate that down as many layers as possible. So I need this much revenue, which means I need this many customers, which means I need this many meetings, this many calls, this many demos, this many leads, which means looking at my current stats, if I just spent £200 a week on ads, then it means the numbers all flow through. And actually getting that level of clarity is a tremendously worthwhile piece of homework for everyone.
Well, and it is, and especially at this time of year, it's what so many of our team here, I mean, we've got over 70 staff now working with us here at Entrepreneur Circle, and a big old chunk of them are working with our customers, with our members right now in this final quarter of the year to put in place this clarity of plan for next year, because it doesn't half make things different. The whole thing becomes different when you've got this clarity of focus.
100%.
And as even go back to your 24,001 target, but you got there, didn't you? And one of the reasons you got there, well, I mean, obviously it was a particularly tiny target, but the reason you got there, but you gave you focus, didn't it? Mm-hmm. You knew what you had to do.
Well, that's it. Because as a business owner, there's so much to do. There's always stuff going on. There's always customers that need help. There's always staff that are causing problems. There's always, flipping heck, we have it here. Oh, the roof's got a leak, flipping heck. Well, that's an afternoon now gone trying to fix a leaky roof.
It actually has.
Which, is, that's the curse of a business owner. But that's all fine if, alongside that, you have this clarity that says, I just need to book 2 meetings this week.
Yeah.
And if I do that on Monday, I can spend the rest of the week dealing with all the other problems and sorting out, knowing that I'm still on track to hit my goal. And that's an interesting point, because I think once you've done the planning, it's really important to then actually track how you are doing against that plan, isn't it? Because I think...
Which is where things like scorecards come in.
Scorecards, my favourite, the worm. Mm-hmm. Goodness gracious.
You do like a worm. We have to talk about the worm one week, can't we?
Gosh, if only someone out there asked us a question about maybe what the heck a worm is. That would be great. We could do a whole episode on that. But that's having visibility on where you're performing versus where you are. And then, like we've got in the calendar for next year, we've got all our quarterly planning sessions.
Yes, we have.
Which the whole purpose of that day, a day each quarter, is just to look at where are we now versus the plan, what do we need to do? Which, I mean, I think there's only there's 4 questions on those quarterly sessions that you need to answer. The first is, what was the plan?
Yes.
For the last quarter, what was the plan? What were we meant to do? Second question is, where are we now? What have we actually achieved? Have we overachieved? Have we underachieved? Are we behind on the plan? Are we ahead of the plan? Third question, what have we learned? If we're behind, why are we behind? If we're ahead, what's working so well? Make sure that we pull out those findings. And then the fourth one, what do we need to do next quarter to either deliver the plan, to catch up on where we are? Because if you make a plan for the year and you're way behind by the end of quarter 1, if it gets to March time, and you've forgotten about this whole big plan and you've not booked any meetings a week and you're still in full behind, it gets harder and harder to catch up and make up that gap, doesn't it? And so having a great start to the year is just tremendous to set you up.
And great starts come when you've got great clarity.
That's it.
And because then it starts to flow through. You mentioned there, once you've got the plan, then you start to carve the time up and you start to put chunks of time in your diary. There was an IFA who I worked very closely with, and his plan, when he'd gone through all the whole process, he wanted 8 meetings a week. So what he did is he put in his diary for the whole year, 1 o'clock on a Monday afternoon and 3:30 on a Monday afternoon. Same on a Tuesday, same on a Wednesday, same on a Thursday. I'm doing 2 meetings a day, Monday to Thursday. But I'm not going home the week before until I've got those 8 meetings in the diary. Because if I get those 8 meetings in the diary, it's impossible for me not to get my business to where I want it to be. Yeah. And now I've got this clarity where I want to be. I'm really excited about it. And if I do all that, I can have Friday off. That was actually a big deal for him, because I could not work on the Friday because so the time then the diary then starts to be chunked up to deliver the plan. So all these really big benefits come from taking a little bit of time out starts with yourself or you and your significant other going for a cliff top walk or a stroll in the hills or a nice meal out somewhere. Just no interruptions. What do we actually want to achieve? Might be quite modest the first time you do it, just to be clear.
And also, depending on the size of the goal that you're striving towards, if you are moving from 50 grand per up to 200 grand, for example, if that was the scenario, if all that was standing between you being, where you wanted to be was 8 meetings a week, you might look at that plan and think, gosh, you know what? It actually makes complete sense for me to employ someone whose sole purpose in life is to book me in 8 meetings a week. And actually, that's their whole job, is just calling up leads, blah, 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 to book in 8 meetings. And they don't have to do anything else. That's all they need to do if they deliver that, because that person now is going to help you deliver that plan. And I think that's something that, when you've mapped out this plan, if the price is big enough, then actually making sure you resource that properly is a really smart move.
And at a practical level, because again, a lot of people, I know when let's grab paper, but I haven't got the cash right now to employ somebody. So say, that's okay. You start cracking the 8 meetings a week, and when you work out how to do it, and you know how to do it, and now you're starting to grow the business, and now you've got the confidence, now you can go out and hire someone to do what you've been doing. So you've got to do the 8 meetings a week for 6 weeks and then you can hire someone, and then the life changes, and it starts to.
It's a whole other episode about how you don't need someone's full-time salary sat in your bank account ready to pay them before you can employ people.
So I hope we've done well enough for Liam here, because I think we've given him clarity as to how he can make sure.
I think there's a few key little exercises that Liam needs to go through. I think starting off by actually mapping out, what do you want? Because you say we're repeating the same year and year and year, and that can be stressful as a business owner. But what do you actually want this business to achieve for you? What do you want it to do? Start there, map it out, cost it out, translate that then through the business maths that Nigel walked through in terms of what does that actually translate to? What does that mean? All the way down. As many layers as you can go. And that'll tell you actually what you need to be focusing on. And then keeping track of that, holding yourself accountable for that. That's the key to planning next year.
Any final words from the marketing meister?
I think that's a pretty clear plan of action. You've got to understand your reasons. Why am I doing this? What do I want? And then build the business.
And I will say that is one of the great perks of being in somewhere like Entrepreneur Circle. Only because, like you were saying earlier about sometimes, you don't know what's possible, you don't know what's out there. Sometimes it's hard to break free of where you're at. And Entrepreneur Circle, it's great to see other people sharing their goals and their aspirations. And someone might be saying, there's so many people in Entrepreneur Circle who now have a housekeeper.
Yes,
because
that's true.
you have introduced them to that concept. And actually, if you hadn't explained that whole thing, they would never have thought to do that. There's so many people who have, bought holiday homes and have, booked trips to nice places, and people say, oh, wow, that looks great. I want to do that as well. So many people who, have, oh, gosh, I want to be able to pay for my kids' university or give them this house deposit or pay for my daughter's wedding. That has been inspired by other people. And so actually having a look around, what are other people doing, just to open your eyes. Because that first step is crucial, because that's going to dictate actually where you end up next year, isn't it?
Boom. I think we've done it. I think this is a wrap, gents. That is it for this week's episode of Business Growth Central. If you've got a question or you've got a business challenge that you'd like us to deal with, as Liam did, or Lucy like was last week, then obviously get us a scroll, wrap it up in a ribbon. You don't need to do that. You can just email podcast@entrepreneurscircle.org, and we may well deal with your question on a future episode.
Gosh.
And if you want to subscribe, we'd like that, wouldn't we? Right.
Always.
Subscription would be nice.
Like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.